So, good morning. We are on tour today. This is Average on Tour. And we are in the beautiful Bromley House Library in Nottingham. And one of the things I've been hoping to do, now I've got my Nottingham Love page on the website, is to meet some local authors. And I'm thrilled to say how many we have in the area, which is wonderful. Some I've read and some I haven't. The ones I have read and already in touch with, of course, I can tap up for an interview a bit quicker. So it's an absolute joy to welcome Sam today, because I first got in touch with Sam over a children's book, a Christmas book, which I completely adored. And then I discovered that Sam also writes adult fiction. And so I've been reading, I'm just going to show a copy. This is the latest one, but I have been reading a series all about Mapton-on-Sea and some of the colourful characters that live there. They are hilarious. They're warm and friendly and really funny. So I wanted to meet Sam and learn more about her and her writing. So Sam Maxfield, the first question is always tea, coffee?
Tea.
Good.
I don't like coffee, never liked it, unless it's in a coffee and walnut cake. And then for some reason I like it.
Then it's all right.
Yeah.
Well, we haven't got drinks with us today. That was a bit remiss, wasn't it? But tell us a little bit about writing. So have you always written, do you think?
Yes, I've always written. I always made up stories as a child. I tried to write my first novel when I was, I think, 11.
Wow, an early start.
Yeah, and I put a picture of that on my Facebook because I found it recently. It was really funny, and it's illustrated because I illustrated everything.
Lovely.
It wasn't very good, but I tried my next one, I think was about 13. So yeah, I've always written, just for me, really.
And what was the first book and you thought, actually, there's something here that I would be happy to share? When did you kind of feel that other people could have a look?
Well, I was in my 20s. I did an MA in writing at Nottingham Love, the first year they ever ran that MA, and it was great. And I started writing a book called Skulk, which was a sort of horror, psychological horror. Ooh. And involved a very strange fox character and quite magic realism, really. And that was the first time I felt, up to then, I hadn't managed my novels. I'd written a lot of short stories, and that was the first time I really thought, wow, this is a novel now. And that actually got me an agent at the time. It didn't get published, but I got an agent, and so yeah, that was the first time.
Lovely. And where did Mapton start?
Oh,
this is book number
3. Yes, there's a novella on the go at the moment, but Mapton actually starts quite funny. I don't know, do you know Mablethorpe in Lincolnshire?
I do.
Yeah. Everyone laughs when you say that. My husband's family, I come from the northwest and moved to Nottingham to go to university, but they go to Mablethorpe every year, and when I say family, I mean extended family, cousins, grandchildren, everyone. And they've been doing that since my husband was 5. And when I joined the family, we'd only been together 6 weeks when I first went.
Oh my.
And we were in that stage of kind of falling in love where I felt I couldn't go for a week without him. So he took me to Mablethorpe, which was a bit of a culture shock for me and the entire family who I'd never met before. And we have to go every single year. And then one year I was just walking, every morning I'd walk on the beach. The beach is beautiful at Mablethorpe, and before breakfast, because I'm not incredibly sociable, spending a week with someone's entire extended family, it's quite hard for me. So the beach walks were really vital in the morning on my own, and Gina just came to me.
She's wonderful.
On the beach, yeah, the character of Gina, and this idea of a town that is quite run down but very eccentric. Mablethorpe, the more time you spend there, the more you sort of see the things that are quite wonderful about it and eccentric and very different than anywhere else.
There is something about British seaside towns,
very
isn't
much
there?
Yeah.
They sort of had their grandeur and they had their kind of high life.
Yeah.
And sadly, they've had that decline. But
Yeah.
I wonder, as people kind of fly less and worry more about the environment and those sorts of things, if they'll have their day again.
I think they definitely are. I think the last couple of years in Mablethorpe we've noticed far more people there. So I think that has sort of they're starting to rise again.
Yeah, interesting.
So yeah, that was the idea for it, and then it grew.
Do you feel there's more to come? Do you think there are more adventures?
There's definitely. I started a novella recently, and I hope it'll be a novella, but it keeps threatening to become another novel, which is about Gina and her forthcoming nuptials.
Oh, I haven't got that far.
No, that's a few books on. I'm sorry, I've given away something there. In a kind of very Mapton manner style.
Sounds intriguing.
So yeah, there is, and there's a short story, a Christmas story. I'm actually writing about.
That's
Mapton.
lovely. Yeah. I like that sense when you start something and you want to know more. You know, with an author continues with it as well. But do you ever get sick of the characters you've written? If you know what I mean.
Yes.
Do you need something fresh?
Yeah, I've got after Must Be Mapton, I thought, well, you know, and then the novella came along. But yes, there is a point where you think, oh, I want to move on. But with each of the Mapton books, they stand alone, but they introduce new characters. So they have the same character. Gina runs through all of them, and Stella runs through all of them. But I introduce new characters in each one, so they keep it fresh for me. Yeah. It Must Be Mapton. I've got a favourite new character called Eleanor Bramley, and she loves animals. She runs an animal sanctuary, but she doesn't get human beings at all, and she doesn't know how to interact with them.
We've all met someone like that.
yeah, and she was a joy, and she's a bit of a nemesis. Branwyn, I'd called her Bramley, thinking of apples. She's a nemesis of Gina.
I can imagine her not getting on. Yeah, lovely. So when you say a novella came to you, do you feel that sometimes that your creativity sort of just happens and then you write it down as it comes to you, or are you a planner and you plan it all out?
I'm not a planner. I knew when I started The Last Resort that it would run over 3 books. I didn't know what would happen in them, but I knew at the end of that book that I wasn't finished. For example, there's a character called Grazia, who is a Polish character, and I knew that she had a background that hadn't been explored, and it is explored much more in the 3rd book. So I knew that I hadn't finished with them, but I didn't know what their adventures were going to be.
Yeah, interesting. And so I'm the sort of person that has 4,000 ideas come at me all the time, and I find it hard to finish things because the next butterfly moment comes. So I sort of scratch them all down. Do you have lots of other things in your head that you sort of think, oh, well, in 5 years I might get round to writing that?
Yeah, I do. I was thinking about something this morning. I've got something that a friend of me discusses quite regularly, the idea for a graphic novel. But neither of us can draw that well. So, I don't know if I can give away the name of the character, but it's about a menopausal woman with superpowers.
Interesting.
Who freak accident manages to channel her menopausal symptoms into powers.
I like it.
Yeah, and we have a great name for her. And so but I know, and I was thinking that about 5 years away, probably still. And I have a novel that I've just started about a character called Susie Cotton. And she's been growing in my mind. So yes, I do have ideas, but I'm lucky I don't have thousands of ideas all at once, because I think I'd go crazy. But I do have ideas, and I know that some of them are going to be sooner than later, and others are on the back burner.
Okay. So when you start writing, you just let it flow? Are you a pen and paper person, or do you type?
I sometimes start on paper. Each novel has its own notebook that goes with it, and sometimes I'll start writing in that, but I nearly always transfer very quickly to computer, and I work in my study, so I don't work on a laptop. I plonk myself down every day when I'm writing and work there, so I'm pretty much glued to one place. I can write, I can continue the story if I really want to, if I'm out somewhere, but then I'll laboriously go and
and does it kind of go beginning to end for you, or do you sort of write and then piece it all together?
No, it goes beginning to end with a few sort of things where I will re-slot them in somewhere, but most of the time it works in quite a linear way with me.
I find it fascinating because everyone's so different.
They are very different.
A lot of people think, oh, well, I'd like to write a story, but I don't know how I'll get a book out the library. And I just think, well, that's going to tell you how that person does it. It's not necessarily going to be how your brain works.
That's right. When you talk to writers or you read anything about writers, they have quite different methods of writing and working. I know when I did my MA, there was a writer called, I can't remember, Michelle Roberts, I think, and she said that she would write everything out of order and have it all over a floor and then put it into some order. Sort of about like shooting a film in a sense, in different orders. And occasionally I do that. Occasionally I'll know a last scene before I know everything else. But most of the time I write in quite a linear manner. And I find if I leave the scene slightly unfinished, that's easier to pick up the next day and then go into another scene. Whereas if you actually finish that scene dead, quite often the next day I'm sort of, how do I start the next scene? But if I leave it slightly unfinished and I'm still in my flow, then I can go on to the next bit.
So do you have quite set hours, or do you work as your flow needs?
I have fairly set hours, not really set hours. I can't write at night because then I can't sleep. It wakes my brain up.
Yeah.
And then I can't sleep at all. My brain is just buzzing with characters. So what I do is I swim generally, most mornings if I can, early morning swim or a walk. And then I come and then I sit down at my computer and I do a few emails and then I say, right, that's it, I've got to write till lunchtime. And then, but the best method I've found, and I've only recently found this year, was from someone else, was if you're stuck, is to set a timer for an hour.
Right.
Have 2 documents open, so the thing that you're working on, your novel, and a kind of diary journal where you can write anything, your shopping list, anything. And you set your timer, you turn off your internet, your phone, everything else, set your timer, and you say, I'm just sitting here and I'm writing in one of these 2 documents for an hour, or 45 minutes, or 30 minutes, never longer than an hour.
Yeah.
And the time goes like that, and I've never once written in my journal. I've just written on the document, on the story. And then afterwards you can say to yourself, if I do nothing for the rest of the day on this, it's fine.
Because I've done that.
But it breaks it, and usually you want to go on and write some more because you've enjoyed it. But that was the best tip I've learned if I'm a bit locked.
Lovely. And so where do you find your inspiration comes from? So Mapton obviously was a physical place that kind of brought characters to you.
All sorts of places, really. I've got a book that's actually one of my favourites that hasn't sold that well because it was so difficult a sell, in that it's a Western magic realism with a mummified outlaw, and it was based on a story that I saw in the 90s on Time Watch about a real outlaw who was mummified and found in 1974 when they were filming the $6 Billion Man, and they traced him back, and he'd been shot down in 1913 and then displayed in carnivals and circuses and all sorts of things. And that character I woke up with the next morning, my own version of him, and that's called West of the Sunset. It's available to buy. But it's been a really hard sell because...
Very unusual.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No publishers wanted to touch it. And it's still one of my favourite characters, but for that, I saw the programme and then my own character came to me and he just wouldn't shut up and leave me alone. But for things like the Mapton novels, Susie Cotton, who I've got in my head at the moment, I'm very observational. I'm not incredibly sociable in that I don't particularly want to go to parties and things. But I like to sit on the bus and listen to people. And I like to go to cafes on my own and hear wig.
Yeah.
And people are always telling me things, and they say things like, oh, this would make a good story for you. And I think, actually, that wouldn't make the good story. But the way that you're telling it, and the reason why you're telling it to me would.
Yes.
And the other things that you're saying. So they go into my blender of a brain. I read a load. I read lots of non-fiction. In fact, when I'm writing my fiction, I can hardly read fiction for some reason. So I read a lot of non-fiction then. And it goes in and comes out in some unexpected way.
Wonderful.
So, yeah.
Excellent. It's so exciting to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for asking me.
So there's lots more to come. There's more in there, in your blender.
Yes, there's lots more in my blender.
Your brain blender, I like that
yeah.
idea. To come. And we were talking just before we started filming about how tough it is actually to be a published author. How did you get to the publishing bit? So you had an agent.
Well, I had an agent, but I'm actually indie now.
Right.
I had an agent, and in the 90s went the traditional route, but didn't really get anywhere, didn't sell. And it was actually I was teaching, and I love teaching. I love being a teacher. So for many years although I wrote, I didn't really concentrate on getting things out and so on. I was doing it for me. But then I found with the Oklahoma Bill book, The West of Sunset, that it was so difficult when I started sending it out. Nobody wanted it. And by that time, indie publishing, self-publishing, the Amazon route had come about. And I thought I'd have a go at that, and I made a lot of mistakes with the cover, with the errors in it, because you think you proofread. You think as an English teacher you proofread, you can't. You have to have someone else do it. But I made errors at first. So I've gone the indie route, and that is very hard to do in some ways, but freeing in others. And I know quite a few writers who've done both. Quite a few established writers. I don't know if you know Cornelia Funk, who writes children's books.
Oh, I've not read her.
The Ink Spell and things
Oh,
like that.
yes.
She's recently gone indie because she got so fed up with her publishers and so on. But selling enough, whether you're traditionally published or indie published, is really difficult. Marketing and traditional publishers now expect you to be on Facebook. They expect you to do your own marketing. It's that's the tough bit, because if you're a writer, you're probably not naturally sociable.
Because you like sitting,
on your own,
writing.
So that's the bit that I've found the hardest and steepest learning curve, but I do enjoy it. What I found is I actually really enjoy going out and doing book talks and author talks with groups, and I've done a lot more of that lately. I really enjoy it. And asking, taking questions, doing things like that.
Yeah.
It's actually been a lot better for me than trying the social media route, which I find quite difficult. I do.
I do think it's very, it's a busy place as well, isn't it?
It's a very busy, lots of people.
Whereas that talk, there's just you and however many people, and so you're really hitting those people in a much more direct way.
Yeah, so, but that is tough, and it is tough to make a living. I remember when I was doing my MA, when I was in my early 20s, and thought, I'm going to be a bestseller, by 26, and nobody's going to stop me. And my lecturer at the time, who was Graham Joyce, who was a really good, sort of successful writer, not a bestseller, but published and did well, saying to me, but most writers never make an actual living. They still have to be teaching on MA courses and so on.
Yes,
and me thinking, right. Thinking, he was right. Sadly, Graham, who was lovely, died quite recently, quite young, but I remember him saying that and not believing it. And
do you feel, despite the reality, which is hard, that the sort of compulsion to write,
absolutely,
to get outweighs that?
Yeah, for me, it outweighs it completely. I have to do it. I can't not do it. So I just hope that people enjoy it. And every time someone says to me that I've read your book, or they put a review on, even if sometimes I'm lucky, I haven't got many bad reviews, but occasionally you'll get someone, I think they've read my book. That's somebody who's read my book, and that's really exciting. To know that there are people reading what you've written is still incredibly satisfying.
Brilliant. Oh, it's wonderful. So, just let us know what's coming next.
Okay, so next will be, this year will be the short story. The Christmas short story will be coming out.
And that will be Mapton.
That will be
Mapton Christmas.
Yeah, Mapton
I can't wait to imagine Mapton at Christmas.
Yeah. Good. And then I think the novella will be next, and Susie Cotton, who is quite a quirky new character of mine. The title, the working title of the book is Susie Cotton Struggles with Life. Oh,
yeah. That's a very attractive title, isn't it? We can all identify.
A little bit Eleanor Olifanti. I don't know if you've read Eleanor Olifanti. I wrote the first couple of pages of Susie Cotton before I read Eleanor Oliphant, and then I read Eleanor Oliphant. I thought,
that's my book.
So I was going to write that book. But no, Susie's quite different, but she's quite a funny character. So again, it will be quite light-hearted, humorous, with a sort of, there's always I think a sadness running through them slightly, but mostly funny and observational.
Lovely.
I always think of my books as, I think of them as, in my mind, I always think, is how folks go on. How folk go on.
It's real life, isn't it?
Yeah, well, the funny things they do.
Yeah.
They're a bit exaggerated, but they're often things that I've heard, or on the bus, or
Yeah, I love it.
theme.
Well, thank you so much for your
Thank
time
you,
today.
That's great.
It's been really lovely to talk to you and actually meet someone. My job is quite virtual,
Yeah.
and it's quite nice to actually meet
Yeah.
someone. And as I say, I'm thoroughly enjoying the books.
Oh, thank you.
So
That's lovely.
it's a real pleasure to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.